Yes, we
Great.
do.
Okay, great. Well, this is once again, this is you see the welcome course screen?
Yes,
All
we
right,
do.
great, perfect. All right. Well, like I said, this is a program called the Welcome Corps. It's a brand new program that was just announced in January of this year by the United States Department of State. Now, the program is a new opportunity for Americans to welcome those seeking freedom and safety and strengthen our own communities at the same time. It is a public-private partnership inspired by what America represents, a beacon of hope and refuge. Y'all are already advocates for immigrants, so I know I don't have to tell you the reasons that we are excited to welcome refugees. But I do want to give you a little bit of background. I'm just going to give a brief presentation, just so you know, about 10 minutes, and then I have time for some questions. It is a public-private partnership. It is founded by the U.S. Department of State, and it is implemented by a consortium of 6 different nonprofit organizations, including the ones you see listed here. My organization, IRIS, is one of those. We're based in Connecticut, and we have worked with refugee sponsor groups for many, many years. Through this program, you can change a life in your community through welcoming. So what is the Welcome Corps? There's 2 main phases of this. And the first phase is what we're doing right now. And what this is it allows a group of 5 US citizens or 5 residents, US residents, to come together and welcome refugees. Now, phase 1, we have a group of refugees waiting for resettlement in sub-Saharan Africa. Most of these are Congolese. They're from other countries as well. I'll explain that in a minute. They're already waiting to come to the United States, and many of them have been waiting for years and years, 5, 10, 15 years. Through phase 1, we are looking for sponsor groups who are willing to sponsor any refugee, and we'll welcome these Africans to come to be resettled. And then phase 2, the first phase is somewhat similar to our current refugee resettlement program. Phase 2 is where things get really interesting. And in this case, it will be the first time in the history of the refugee program that a group of 5 people can sponsor a specific refugee that they know. So if you know a family, if you have a refugee who is a friend of yours or a family member who's a refugee around the world, you can form a group of 5 US residents and citizens, and you can sponsor this particular refugee to come into the United States. And like I said, this has never been done. Now, you might know that Canada has a similar program. It's called private sponsorship, where Canada has some refugees that are resettled through existing agencies and some that are resettled through church communities and through what we call private sponsorship. Canada also allows this model where you can name or say, I want to sponsor that refugee family through the program. Here's the groups of people that are of refugees that are going to be coming through phase 1, the first phase. They, as you can see here, Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, South Sudan, Somalia, Burundi, and Eritrea. Now, one of the things that I'm really excited about this program and welcoming this community that I think you might identify with, because I understand that you're advocates. There's been a lot of great attention to refugees in the United States in the last few years, and every refugee deserves welcome in the United States. At the same time, we have seen a lot of welcoming of Ukrainian refugees from Europe, a lot of welcoming of Afghans, and one of the groups that has been neglected are refugees from Africa and Black refugees who have been, many of them waiting in refugee camps, escaping equally terrible conditions. So one of the things I'm excited about this is that this is a program that in this first phase, we're really focused on helping some of those African refugees to come to the United States and be welcomed in the same way or in the similar or actually even better ways than Ukrainians and Afghans have been. All right. So what does the group do? So the way this works is that a group of people, and I understand you're a church community, so I'll speak about a church. It doesn't have to be a church, but any 5 people can come together, but it's very common for churches to do. 5 people come together, and basically you might have heard of the refugee resettlement system and how refugees normally come through refugee agencies. Refugee agencies are organizations that have contracts with the government to provide all these services, and they're usually located in big cities and mid-sized towns. What's interesting about the Welcome Corps is that when you form a group, you are the resettlement agency. You provide everything that the refugee needs, everything that a resettlement agency does, but we actually believe you'll do. We love refugee agencies. I worked for a refugee agency for 12 years, but we also believe that volunteers who are committed to this work, sponsor groups, provide a level of personal attention and care that is just really, really unique. And that's one of the great things about the Welcome Corps. So here's a long list of the things that the Welcome Corps groups do. It's basically everything from picking them up at the airport, helping the kids get into school, which is my favorite part, helping the adults find jobs, and helping them become self-sufficient. What does it take to become a Welcome Corps group? You need to form 5 adults. They need to all live in the same town, in the town that you plan to resettle refugees. You have to complete a training, background checks, complete a plan, and then you have to raise a certain amount of money, $2,375 per refugee, in order to sponsor a refugee. I'm going through this very fast, and when we finish this, I will make sure you know the website where you can read all kinds of detail. I'm going to skip this slide for the interest of time. If you decide to apply, and if you decide to sponsor through the Welcome Corps, you will be supported remotely throughout the process. So even though there is no resettlement agency in your community, there would be somebody like me or my organization that would provide coaching and support during your application process and once the refugee arrives. What does that mean? That means, well, like I just said, supporting you with applying, with training, and helping you after the refugee arrives. This is the steps that it takes to apply, which I already kind of talked through. So I'm gonna skip past this, and I can send this PowerPoint to Landon. He can share it with others. But this is, again, a very brief intro to this amazing program. I'm really excited to talk to your group, and just we are very, very much looking right now for groups that want to form and that want to learn more about the Welcome Corps. The next step would be, well, I'll take some questions, but after that would be to look on our website. And then if your church group is interested, then I'd be happy to do a more elaborate conversation at a later time. But right now, in the interest of time, let me take some questions. I have about 5 minutes, Landon. I hope that's okay.
Yes, that'll be fine. If I can start us off, we know in our region, we have a very high cost of living. So are you able to speak to, is there a way we can get a sense of realistically what kind of financial commitment would probably be needed in an area that's going to be more expensive and costly?
That's a really key question. And I would say one thing that I did not say is that we expect the sponsor group to support the refugee for 3 months. And then we expect that by the 3rd month, they should be working and they should be able to support themselves with an entry-level job. So you know your community, and part of the application process is to create a budget. And so what I would say you would want to do is you would want to create a realistic budget of how somebody working an entry-level job in your community, how much it would cost, and figure out how much would it cost for you to pay those expenses for them for 3 months, and then how much would be some of the startup costs. Put that number together. That's the amount of money you'll need to raise to support the family. And then you also want to think about what is an entry-level salary in your community. Is it $15 an hour? Is it $20 an hour? And is it realistic for someone who may be a single parent to support their family in that community? So there's definitely some math involved, and I'll send you the links that I send you will have some budgeting and fundraising tips you can consider.
That's helpful. Thank you. Yeah, we have a question, Ellen, in the back.
Is the program limited to the countries that you listed? We're a border state, California, and most of the immigrants and refugees are coming from the Southwest, not from Africa.
Do you need me to repeat the question?
I heard the first part. Is our program limited to those countries?
Yeah. Because knowing that we're a border state and many of the individuals that are coming here are coming from South America.
Okay. Yeah. So currently the Welcome Corps is limited to those countries. There are other programs for people from Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba, and Haiti. Our program is focused right now on African refugees, which have up to now been neglected. It is possible in the future, in phase 2, people could sponsor refugees from any, if you are naming, if you're saying, I want to sponsor this specific refugee, it could be any refugee from around the world.
Thank you. Molly.
So it sounds like these are the refugees that would normally be coming from the UNHCR program. Is that the case?
Yeah, these are probably, these are folks that have come through the UN refugee program and referred to the United States.
Okay. So I'm very curious as to why, because there are 10 organizations that were designated by the State Department to resettle refugees that came through that program. Why is there not significant involvement from those 10 organizations?
The question is, because there were 10 organizations involved in the UN refugee resettlement program, why is there not significant involvement from those 10 organizations?
Yeah. So many of those organizations are involved in this work. I mean, 2 of the 10 are IRC and Church World Service, which are part of our consortium. The idea of this is to the regular resettlement program will always continue. The idea with this is to create a second pathway that is funded by private citizens. And the reason that's being done is because it allows us to welcome more people into our communities. It also it gets more Americans involved in this program. So one thing that's amazing about the Canada program is that 1 in every 4 Canadians has either been involved with welcoming a refugee or knows someone that has been. What that's meant for Canada is that the refugee resettlement has become ingrained in their and so we feel like that's a great way to build community support. And then secondly, we also believe that private sponsors provide a different level of service. And lastly, because this private program has almost no cost to the US government, we believe that it may be more resilient to political changes and is less likely to be cut by future administrations because it's basically a program that is funded by the citizens of the US by their own choosing.
That leads to another question. Every Afghan refugee who came to the United States was provided with a specific amount of money. I think it was $3,500, $3,610, something like that. So these refugees coming through the UNHCR program are not provided with any financial assistance from the US government at all.
So the question is whether these refugees.
Yeah, I heard it.
Yeah, okay.
The answer is that the private sponsors are providing that same amount of money. So the reason I said it's $2,375, that is the exact amount that the federal government gives to agencies for resettling one refugee. In this case, the private group is raising that money to spend on the refugees. So the refugees get the same amount of money, but through a private means.
Aaron, do you have time for one more question?
Sure, I do.
Anna.
Good question, by the way.
This may not be a fair question, but I'll ask it anyway. To whom do we discuss? To whom do we appeal for the fact that we would like other countries, not to do the ones from Africa, But clearly, there are people from Mexico and Central America whom we would also like to welcome and who would be appropriate to welcome in this state in particular. So who do we tell that to?
That's a great question. Obviously your Congress rep, your representatives, your our president, I definitely, that's a very, very important point. We believe that, there's a lot of problems with our immigration policy. There's a lot of problems with this current administration. I previously worked at supporting organizations at the border, and I was there when we went for the transition from Trump to Biden, and we were really disappointed, to tell you the truth. I would say this is one of many programs that people can get involved in. Now, if you are, this is a program that a lot of people like who are in places where they don't really have an opportunity to serve or to welcome immigrants. So I'm hearing from people from like small town Oregon who've always heard about refugees and they've never met one, or never resettled someone. So this is the program for situations like that. It is not clearly, it is not addressing refugees from South America at this point. Now in phase 2, once people can sponsor someone they know, then everything starts to change, because I personally know a lot of Venezuelan refugees that are in Colombia right now. I could sponsor them and bring them to the US. So that's part of their answer there as well. I definitely would encourage you, and I mentioned to Landon, if you're not already familiar with the program that has been set up where you can sponsor Cubans, Venezuelans, Nicaraguans, and Haitians through the US government, you definitely should check that out. I will send that link as well. The disadvantage of that program is that it is a temporary program. So people come in with a 2-year parole, which is great for 2 years, but doesn't give them a long-term path to citizenship.
Thank you, I appreciate this great program.
Sure. I thank you so much for your time. You guys have great questions, and obviously I know that we could talk a long time, but I will send to Landon some links, and I trust that Landon will send them along to everybody else. And like I said, if you ever want to get more details, I'll be happy to schedule another time for a phone call or a meeting with your group or whatever the case may be.
Thank you, Aaron.
All right. Thank y'all. Bye.
All right, Rich, can you put the slide back up with the links on it? So I'm sensing from the group a general sense that we really would like to support the neighbors that are maybe closer to us. And so I have a sheet I'm going to pass around, just if you have an interest in exploring that further, whatever the other organizations are. I know he had mentioned at one point sponsor circles was one other organization. I don't know if they're the group that works with the Venezuelans and the Cuban refugees, but if you're interested in talking more about that to see if it's something we want to be a part of, I'll pass around the sheet. And there's no pressure on that too. If this isn't the right fit for our group, that's fine. So with that, are there any other questions? I know we don't have Aaron with us, but any other questions while we're, yes. Okay. So she's sharing, Sally's sharing, she already received a message from Welcome Corps this week. So yeah, it's out. They're reaching out.
I must say, this is what troubles me about this. The US government is reneging on their obligations to the United Nations with respect to the refugees. We have obligations, and those obligations were formally filled by the 10 organizations. The Church was one, the Church was one, the United Nations was one, and so on. Okay? And they were resettling on. And it sounds like the US government really wants to, I don't want to, generate the desire of anyone to sponsor someone, and it is true, these people have been in the middle of the camps, you know, in sub-Saharan Africa, and for very long time.
Landon, we can't hear. Can Molly step closer to the microphone?
Can you speak
Oh, I'm
towards the
sorry.
microphone,
I'm
maybe?
sorry.
That's okay.
How much did you not hear?
I think most of it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just
Most
be-
everything.
I'll be really brief. What troubles me is that this is, we have, the United States government has obligations to the United Nations under the UNHCR program to assist in resettling refugees. These are all refugees that have been vetted by the United Nations and have been in camps that are run by the United Nations and various organizations. And previously, there were 10 groups in the United States authorized by the State Department to be involved in this resettlement. And now it looks like the US government really wants to, instead of fulfilling its own obligations to the United Nations, wants to have US citizens step up to the plate. It doesn't mean we shouldn't, but I'm disturbed by what it means.
Yep, I think there's more for us to unpack there.
Yeah.
So with that, I am going to turn it over to our group who did the border visit in January, and we're going to hear a presentation from them about their time. While they are coming up to share their slides, if anyone wants to get another round of food, sorry, that doesn't apply to our virtual friends. But please feel free. And if you were interested in being a part of that sign up list, please just put your name in the chat window and we'll make sure and write that down.
Landon, where do you want us?
I think you are on the screen right there, so you're perfect. Just as long as you're right next to the TV, you'll be fine. And just speak, if you can orient your faces this way,
All right.
so they can hear you. So Rich, if you can pull up the next slide, that would be great. Thank you.
Hey, so my name is John Altman, and I'm a member of the Unitarian Society. And in January, I went to the border with Reverend Jeanette Love from the Catholic Church of the Beatitudes, and with Hillary Peedy, who was a member of that community. And we went specifically to teach the people at the shelter how to use the stress reduction techniques in the capacitar program. So that was our objective, and in 2 days we led, I believe, 3 groups, some quite large, and we worked with children and young people, and also adults, many mothers and also fathers. So we had quite a memorable experience.
Next slide. This is Suzanne Jabro. She is the founder of Border Compassion. We went under her organization. The mission of Border Compassion is to invite faith community groups and others to cross over the border to offer compassionate humanitarian response to families living at the Posada de Inmigrante. Next slide. So this was our team, as John mentioned, Jeanette, myself, and John, and this is us in front of the Mexicali border crossing. Next slide. And as John mentioned, we came to teach some of the Capacitar's methods. A Capacitar is a worldwide organization. Its mission is to heal others in the world by teaching body-based practices that empower people to use their inner wisdom to heal and transform themselves. Such techniques as Tai Chi. And here we're pictured teaching handholds. And John made these lovely cards that have the handholds in Spanish. And there's a little poem on the back to help them remember this technique. Next slide, please. And we also did some Tai Chi with them, body movements, and you can see we engage families in the practice. Next slide. And they were very receptive. Next slide, please. Even joyous. Next slide, please. And we had the opportunity, it was kind of hectic the first day, but the second day we were able to find a space, a little quieter space, and those adults that wanted to do some of the practices. Here's two men doing the switching technique. And it was just amazing to see what a calming influence this was. The director of Capacita, Dr. Pat Kane, went down and did an initial workshop with them, and she is coming back this next month. And hopefully we can go back. The idea is not just us teaching them, but to teach others so that they become empowered. And that's the whole philosophy of Capacita. In Spanish, it means empowerment. So that's the whole idea, to empower others. Next slide, please. And John, you can address this. We've had opportunity to interact with some of the folks there.
Yeah, while we were there, we had the good luck really of sitting in on a session with a volunteer attorney named Kip, a gentleman who visits regularly and answers questions. And at that time, the immigration services had created an app, a phone app called CPB-1, which everyone from that point on was required to use in order to make appointments, in order to inquire about their status.
I'm going to give this to you to use as a microphone.
Oh, okay.
Pass it around.
Okay. So the app caused a lot of confusion on the part of the immigrants at the shelter. So there were many questions about how to use it, when to use it, and it gave us a very clear sense of how difficult their situation is and how confusing it is to try and deal with the U.S. government in this technological realm. So I had a chance to speak with this woman, and her confusion and anxiety was typical of the folks that I interacted with. It's just awful.
And we understand the bugs are still there. There's still great difficulty in using that. There are many errors in the system, and people that had been waiting months in queue to get that appointment ever since our policy in the previous administration of stay in Mexico. You know, they have been in a queue and suddenly they're at the back of the line. So it was very disconcerting for these folks. Next slide, please. We did have an opportunity to play with the kids, which was just delightful. Next slide. They were just so eager. They have nothing to do all day, no place to play. It was really hard to see. And they're not in school. Next slide. After going to the shelter, we went to it's an overflow shelter called Refugio del Migrante. Next slide. And this place, Rich, next slide. This place is really kind of sad. It had burned in a fire that was accidental on another property. And so, next slide. they had just kind of cobbled together some rooms. This was a typical room with 6 to 8 people in a burned out room. Next slide, please. Yes, they did their laundry, no place to play, no place to cook. Next slide, please. And this is the kitchen that they built. They used to be in a community center for meals. And for some reason, they're no longer doing that. So they're hobbling the kitchen together. And this is a great need. I mean, this is in a burned out building. So I know Border Compassion is working on getting better supplies because this is a large group, over 40 families in here. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is the kitchen and the refrigerator, the resident cat. Next slide, please. And I'm going to turn this over to Charlotte, and she's going to talk about the youth group visit that very weekend.
Right. So this is a bit of a misnomer that it says Youth Group from Unitarian Society, because it was really a partnership trip with Trinity Episcopal as well. So I was there. Lorinda Marshall, who's on this call, was there, along with 6 youth and a total of 5 adults. And we came down just on the tail end of when the Capacitar folks left. You can go on to the next slide. And we went down with a whole lot of art supplies, several suitcases full of art supplies, and just games and projects because as Hillary was saying, the kids have very little to do. They're not in school. They're just in the shelter all day. And so they really look forward to having folks come and visit and you know, give them things to do. Next slide. We quickly discovered that they got really excited when we hung their artwork. They got really into the paint. I mean, paint was everywhere. It wasn't just, you know, on the paper, it was everywhere. And they quickly became, they loved seeing their paintings hung on the wall. So you can't really read that yellow sheet, but it says Museo de Arte, so that they could hang their paintings, and they kept thrusting paintings at me to hang in the museum. Next slide. And again, you can maybe just kind of go through these a little, Rich, and I'll just tell you when to stop. These are just youth, and that's our minister, Julia Hamilton, making God's eyes. Yes. Next slide. Yeah. Oh, this parachute was very popular. We really didn't come prepared with any games for the parachute. I think someone stuck it in at the last minute, but they spent a good 20 minutes, just mostly the little kids, just running under it and out from, and it was hysterical. And they just loved that. Next slide. And then this must be the next day. We came back Sunday morning and helped prepare breakfast for everyone in the shelter. And so those are members of our youth working with some of the women living in the shelter, cracking a whole lot of eggs. Next slide. Again, just preparing the breakfast and getting ready to serve. Yeah, and then this is just a picture of our group, and the gentleman next to Sister Suzanne, beyond as I'm facing the screen on my right, was someone we met in our hotel on the California side of the border, and he overheard Sister Suzanne talking about the work that she does in Mexicali and got very interested. He was a long haul trucker and just happened to be in the area and comes through periodically. And so she invited him to come. So he came with us that Sunday, we all rode over in cabs and helped prepare food, the breakfast and everything. And was so moved. I'd like to check in with Sister Suzanne because he wanted to do it again when he's back around. So that was kind of a neat connection that we made. Next slide. And then I would just, if we have a minute, do we have a minute? I'd love to, none of our youth were able to come tonight, but one of our youth, Quinn Hartman, wrote a reflection that she shared at the Unitarian Society one Sunday. And I think it captures how the experience was for the teens that went on this trip. So I'll just read this if that's okay. She says, there were 4 people from the Unitarian Society youth group and 2 from Trinity, as well as the 5 adults. We drove to Calexico and stayed in a hotel. On Saturday, we took taxis to the border, walked through the border crossing, and then took taxis to the shelter. We played games with the kids, helped with food, and gave out prizes. Yeah, we gave prizes for everything. We had a big suitcase full of prizes. Then we went back across the border for the night. We went back on Sunday to make breakfast for everyone. I thought I'd share some things I learned. One of the activities we helped with was origami. I love origami, so I was happy to help at that station. While I was helping, I made a few paper airplanes. I was surprised to look behind me more than 10 minutes later to see a little boy still playing with a paper airplane that by that time was covered in dirt and was ripped. All small kids like playing, even if it's in a shelter and they have been through a lot. I also learned that the seat belts in taxis in Mexico are jammed into the seat so that you can't use them. So be warned. The shelter that we went to was originally an LGBTQ shelter. At least one family was there because their family threatened to kill them because they were part of the LGBTQ community. There is too much hate in the world. On a lighter note, I also learned that Applebee's pastas all come with meat, not ideal for those of us who don't really like meat. Wait, the Applebee's was right next to the hotel. But you can still order them without meat. You just have to ask. While we were at the shelter, we also helped with a painting and drawing activity. To get the paintings to dry, we started taping them to the wall. It quickly became a very big art museum. Every place is happier with colorful artwork, especially if it's made by kids. On our second day, we helped make breakfast with the food we bought the day before. We were told that this was a special treat because they don't usually make breakfast on Sunday. It was great to be part of a special day. While I have a lot more stories, the main thing I learned is that even through difficult times, these kids are still so full of joy. They need us to care and help. From Quinn, yeah.
We want to say thank you to the whole group. Since we have this microphone now, just raise your hand. We'd love to open it up for questions, and then we can pass the microphone to people who are speaking. Or if you want to raise your hand on the Zoom as well.
I wanted to ask Charla if I think our youth are thinking about helping to support fundraising for a kitchen.
Yes. Yes. Our youth group, in fact, this Sunday, I think, is getting ready to launch a GoFundMe to help with that kitchen that you saw the pictures of. And in fact, I want to talk to whoever's pictures those were because we'd like to use them on the GoFundMe page. So yes, our youth group was very moved by that trip, and some of them would like to go back and continue to do work to support the families there.
We would like to go back perhaps in the fall. As I mentioned, Pat Kane is going to be teaching another workshop with Capacitar. But more importantly, it's not, my experience was not necessarily what we brought, but how we were really transformed by the experience and really truly getting a picture of what these folks are going through. And I think that's the most important part of these border crossings. And I would encourage others to experience it as well.
This is Landon. I know our screen is small. I have a question related to that because the Interfaith Sanctuary Alliance, a lot of our work has been around trying to stand with our local immigrant neighbors here around Santa Barbara County. And I think why this is so important is because it gives a lot of context, especially when we're learning about the fact that there are asylum seekers here in Santa Barbara County
and just helps us to understand more of their experience. So I'd love to hear if you want to share sort of what context this brings to anyone you might meet here in Santa Barbara or in this area.
Well, I would say, you know, listening to some of the stories of what they went through just to get to the shelter. Many were from Central America. Everyone that I spoke with were fleeing for their lives. And you don't always really understand that when you meet with your immigrant neighbor here, you know, of the trauma, the incredible trauma that they have been through.
Any other questions, comments? Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for putting this together. And the next steps, I know you shared about the GoFundMe. Are there any other next steps that we should be expecting?
Crossover, maybe. Yes, yes. The idea of having another crossover in the fall, it's in the works.
Okay, so stay tuned. All right, Rich, I think we can go to the next slide. So towards the end of our meeting, I wanted to just bring up, we have our annual Love Your Neighbor Week coming up. So we started doing this back in 2018, and we got a little sidelined by the pandemic, but this is our 4th Love Your Neighbor Week. And the concept for this was, we're an interfaith group. We're, as I mentioned, largely non-immigrant communities, faith communities, but most of our religions or faith traditions have some kind of statement that says to love the immigrant, love the alien, love the refugee in your midst. And so this campaign began in 2018 to try and get faith communities to just push that message out all at the same time, and then to try and get other community members to spread that message as well, because I think that's something we have the power to do as faith communities. It's a platform we can stand on. And so there's 3 components to our Love Your Neighbor campaign this year. The first is that we have a series of faith communities that have signed up, and they've said, yes, we will speak about this in our regular weekly service that week. So you can see a list of faith communities here. I'll just read these because they're small. And this is probably not comprehensive. There may be 1 or 2 that haven't signed up yet, but we have Beloved Community Church, Catholic Church of the Beatitudes, Christ Presbyterian Church, First Congregational Church, First United Methodist Church, the Free Methodist Church, Live Oak Unitarian Universalist Congregation, Santa Barbara Friends Meeting, Trinity Episcopal Church, Unitarian Society of Santa Barbara, and more. And these are only the faith communities that have a regular weekly service. We know there are several other faith-based initiatives such as SB Cares and other groups that also will be supporting the week as well. But we wanted to start by acknowledging that. The second component, if you go to the next slide, is we have a communications campaign. So you may know that the Santa Barbara Independent every November has a list of local heroes from our community that they share. And so Charla and I reached out to as many of them as we could from the last 3 years to try and ask them if they would write an op-ed about why it matters to love your immigrant neighbor. We were able to get 6 back. These are obviously busy people because they're local heroes. But we got some really cool names. We have the CEO of the food bank. We have one of the heads of SenCal locally, a couple of other executive directors of local organizations. And so we're talking with the Independent. We're hopeful that they've said that they could probably get a series posted on their website. If they can't, we'll be sharing these that week of May 4th. And so we would love your help spreading these. It's just a way of reminding our community that this is not some fringe message. This is something that our leaders and our heroes in the community also support and stand by. And so we'll be using the hashtag #LoveYourNeighborSB on social media if that's your thing. You can go to the next slide, Rich. The last piece is we have a vigil, and this will be the first year since 2018 that we're able to do it in person. And so the vigil will be on Thursday, May 4th at 5:30 at De La Guerra Plaza. We are working on a virtual option as well, but obviously, as you could see from tonight, there's some hiccups to figure out. But we do encourage you to join us. We'll have Eder Gawana-Macedo from the 805 on DocuFund speaking, some faith leaders from the Islamic Society, from one of the Jewish congregations in town, from the Free Methodist Church, and we've asked a couple of other faith leaders as well from Unitarian and Catholic traditions. The question was whether it will be virtual, and we're trying to, yes. Yeah. We just need to figure out how we'll do the sound for a virtual component of the vigil. So I don't think I posted it on here, but the website for the event week is loveyourneighborsb.org, and that has all the list of events and the links and things. We do encourage you to share these as well. They're on Facebook, they're on the website, as I mentioned. We'd love to just keep spreading the word out. This is really a campaign for our non-immigrant community. The point is, let's try and remind everybody why this matters. Even though we don't have the same presidential administration in office, this is still a very pertinent issue that isn't going away and isn't necessarily getting better in many instances. Are there any questions about the Love Your Neighbor Week? Great. So you can go to the next slide, Rich. I wanted to take a little bit of time in our meeting to open it up because we have some representatives from a couple different organizations here, and I'm just going to name all of the local organizations that we've partnered with that I was thinking of in the moment anyway. So we have the Immigrant Legal Defense Center, Importa Santa Barbara, Immigrant Hope, the 805 Immigrant Coalition, Drivers Listos, SB Cares, the Afghan Refugee Task Force, and more. These are all groups that we hope you will get involved with, and we'll share more ways to connect with them. But I want to open it up. Maybe I'll start with Molly, if you want to share any updates from any of the groups that you're involved with. And then if anyone else is involved with one of these and wants to share an update as well.
The Immigrant Legal Defense Center is holding an annual get-together next week on the 26th. It's actually fully subscribed right now, but for those of you who get our newsletter, everything in the newsletter updates you on what we're doing right now. We are really focused on unaccompanied minors crossing the border and legal defense for them. And Drivers Listos continues to roll along. Right, okay, I'm sorry. Drivers Listos is an organization that was started to provide rides for our immigrant neighbors because during the previous presidential administration, ICE set up roadblocks and they were stopping cars that were driven by people who looked as though they could be immigrants. So we started driving our immigrant neighbors at that point. And the situation with ICE is a little different now, but there's a community of people that still need rides to doctor's appointments, to court hearings in Los Angeles, etc. So we are still doing that. The Afghan Refugee Task Force resettled a family, a mother and two daughters in Texas. They are actually doing well. They have been joined by a family member who's assisting the mother, who has really had a lot of trouble adjusting to a new environment, in hopes that she can become more self-sustaining. We are considering looking at whether we can get other members of her family here now. That's something that's just being discussed. And hand it off to someone else.
Evelyn, can I, if you're on the call still, can I put you on the spot to share what's going on with SB Cares? You may not be with.
Hi, yes, I am here. And SB Cares is sort of in the process right now of identifying our new directions. And we've really focused in the past year on trying to learning about and then trying to sustain the Immigrant Legal Defense Center. We just are so taken with the work they do and the need for people that will assist them in doing that work, particularly with the unaccompanied minors. So we are, SB Cares is, I think, going to try to, around the holiday, the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, which is a harvest holiday, which has us staying in shelters that are not fully formed, but the kind of thing that would, if we could welcome immigrants and use this as a way for teaching about the needs of immigrants. We're thinking about doing that in the fall. So as far as I know, that's pretty much where we stand right now.
Thank you, Emily.
Mm-hmm.
Any others or anyone else that I didn't include on this list? All right, Rich, you can take us to the next slide. We just want to share, there is an ongoing statewide campaign for a state Senate bill, SB 227, which is the Safety Net for All Workers bill. And this would provide unemployment benefits for excluded undocumented workers. This has been an ongoing campaign now for over a year. And so we just want to keep pushing it. I believe our state senator here in Santa Barbara County, Monique Limon, is already in support, but it never hurts to keep pushing. And we also, we follow the California Immigrant Policy Center. Their website is caimmigrant.org, and they regularly will host different campaigns to keep pushing this forward, including phone banking to other counties and other jurisdictions within the state of California to try and push this forward. So it's just, there's always different initiatives to support our undocumented communities here. California has a lot of protections that other states do not afford, so we just want to keep pushing that forward. Yes, question, Anna.
Actually, it's a comment. I'm also a member of the League of Women Voters and the Immigrant Interest Group for the state. And I'm one of two people in that group that's following legislation in California. And if you ever want to talk about that, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. If you go onto LegInfo, LEGINFO, online, you can see all the legislation that is currently pending about that impacts immigrants in California. And for instance, there are some that expand covered California to include immigrants. There's others that do that are interested in food assistance. So there's a lot of legislation that's coming through, and it's problematic this year because California is facing a budget deficit. So I personally am the legislative person that's working on 227. So if you have any thoughts or interest or information, please let me know. I'm trying to prepare a letter of support for the state league to have them officially support 227. There are lots and lots of organizations that have already indicated support. So if your faith community wants to do that, that would be great. I'm trying to get the League of Women Voters to do it. So the more support, the better.
Really glad you're in the room. I had no idea. Could I share your email address when we do our next email blast for more? And it would be great if we can get the LegInfo link as well to share that out broadly.
Sure.
I have one question, and it just may be the terminology here, but it says unemployment benefits for excluded undocumented workers. Are there some undocumented workers who actually get unemployment benefits?
No. Thank you, Landon. Undocumented workers, many undocumented workers and their employers contribute to the unemployment fund.
to the tune of something like $485 million a year. However, when they're unemployed, they are not eligible for those benefits because they're undocumented. So it doesn't matter that they're undocumented when they have to contribute, but it does matter when they have to participate. This particular piece of legislation isn't really to participate in the usual. This is, by the way, Senator Durazzo is the champion of this legislation. This is to provide them for maximum of 20 weeks if they provide all the sort of documentation that would be required. For 20 weeks, they would qualify for $300 a week. But just mind you, these people are paying already, but not collecting on what they have paid, which seems like a clear injustice to me. But I think one of the tricky things, especially in this particular fiscal year, will be that, of course, the state uses their money for other purposes other than supporting them. And so this will mean, you know, in a sense, paying them back and not using that money for other purposes.
Any other questions or comments? All right, you can go to the next slide, Rich. I think this is our last slide. So we just wanted to share the different ways to get plugged in. If you haven't signed in, we would love for you to sign in just so we can stay in touch with you. If you'd like to get on our list, you can also email me, landon@sbact.org. As I mentioned, our Love Your Neighbor Week begins next week. A week from today is technically the official date, although some faith communities, I think, meet on Wednesday. We plan to have our next all-call meeting in the summer of this year. It was really great to just get to be here tonight. So we want to say thank you to Molly for coordinating all the food, to others who helped, Charla, Sally, and others who contributed as well. And thanks to Trinity Episcopal for hosting us. And also thank you to everyone on Zoom for bearing with us as we figured this out. But we do hope to have this again in the summer and keep growing the numbers. We encourage you to volunteer locally. As I mentioned, Molly is with Drivers Listos, the Immigrant Legal Defense Center, and the Afghan Refugee Task Force. We have Anna with the League of Women Voters. We have Evely and others with SB Cares, and other organizations that we didn't get to tonight. If you're interested in getting more involved, please, you can email me. You can also talk with these others who are here at the meeting tonight. Is there any other new business? I see a comment in the chat. Oh, just a thank you for doing it on Zoom. Yeah. Yes, Evely.
I think that you have the wrong date listed on this slide. You have Love Your Neighbor Week starting March 27th. I just want to be sure everybody knows that that is incorrect.
You're correct. That should be April 27th. Thank you, Evely.
Sure.
All right. Well, with that, we will conclude our meeting. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, everyone.